Since the Ripple SEC lawsuit has been settled, I have a fantastic tale to share with you today. We concluded that Ripple has grown more. Comfortable discussing some of its behind-the-scenes activities, and in this video, I'd like to share a Twitter exchange I had with David Schwartz the other day. He spoke about a variety of important topics there, including how large institutions are developing stable currencies on the XRP ledger and how XRP could eventually replace the dollar as the world's reserve currency. Guys, this is one of the most incredible spots in the world. David Schwartz's interview is one of the most fascinating I've seen in a long time. If you skip any of this, you should watch it all the way through. You're completely failing yourself. This was one of the most beautiful sights I've ever seen. Please wait until you get to the conclusion, because David Schwartz discusses something that the XRP community has been wondering about for quite some time. When will huge amounts of XRP be available? Banks start using the XRP ledger is a touch slow and dry at the start of this. At the end of this tape, he gives a direct answer to this question and discusses the reasons for the bank's decision to stop working with Ripple if you have. I've been watching this channel for quite some time. You be aware that I said that banks had to wait because of the SEC's lawsuit. David Schwartz addresses this. This is wonderful right away in the film, and just hearing that made me extremely enthusiastic about all that will happen in the future years. Keep an eye on this underdog, David. Hello there, David. I have a burning question for you that I have been meaning to ask for quite some time. Exhibits F and were presented in court, which discussed how the ODL was expensive compared to other transactions accessible in the current financial systems and how Ripple rewarded the real payments to make. Case: do Ripples still offer incentives to consumers, or have they fixed the pricing for OBL transactions themselves? So it depends on the markets and customers you're referring to while aggressively pursuing cost reduction. Naturally, production incentives are still relevant in some industries. We place a high priority on cost reduction. However, we also pursue markets that are sometimes relatively inefficient due to their high efficiency. We, for example, do not target the USD/EUR exchange rate. You only need to be a fraction of a basis point ahead of the competition, but you see us more in markets like USD to MEX10, which are less efficient and allow us to compete without having to be as cost-effective. However, in my opinion, the problem is that when consumers compare prices, they compare normal prices. One of the primary advantages of ODL is that you can keep a single pile of USD or XRP from multiple channels without needing to balance over the weekends. Furthermore, if you appropriately account for aspects such as capital savings, the economics appear to be substantially better. However, some of those economics are only relevant to customers with several corridors in particular ways. We are also focusing on clients whose demands are compatible. This is one of the reasons we converted from banks early on. We believe banks were the best prospects for OBL, but due to rising capital costs, we have shifted our focus. Non-bank financial organizations and a variety of payment service providers now can execute transactions on weekends, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and those capital savings are beginning to pay off. But the economics are complicated in the US market, for example. There is a lot of local liquidity. In contrast to the Philippine peso, where there is less local liquidity, Ripple must occasionally stimulate market making, which we can achieve by financing XRP so that large transactions can be executed with tight spreads. The cost of lending is that it costs us nothing. We pay nothing to keep XRP on hand, so that clients can swiftly obtain it when they require it. But do you consider our expense for such products or their true market value? When the economics of ODO are examined, one of Ripple's best-kept secrets is the ability to maintain XRP almost free of charge. As a result, we can leave XRP available for consumers to purchase on demand and at a low cost. We can virtually pre-fund several places for free. However, in economics, treating anything as having no cost is unjust. The gist of it is that it is difficult, and that the economics are dependent on how much weight you give to things like the cost of financing and the need for pre-funding. I'm thankful Can I ask you a question? A few more items, yes, you are referring to a ripple. If I recall correctly, the Prisma API is stated in the court docs as a mechanism for the ODL to break up payments into smaller sums to gain better price action while operating on the ODL. Is it still true, or has the AVM replaced it, causing ODL to fail? Use any DXEs that may modify your thinking on using DEX services for ODL, which would allow us to trade against arms that do not occur. DEX Liquid is currently compatible with Prisma, has the capability of dividing large transactions into smaller ones. Can use several exchange liquidity sources to more intelligently take advantage of liquidity. It can aggregate them. There are thus some marketplaces where the market is thin, however. If you spread out a huge transaction across time, you are taking someone with a higher volatility risk but a smaller cost. That is what Prisma accomplishes, even though a major effort has been made to do so. DEX usage is not yet integrated into ODL, so who did you depend on? The XRP ledger is a fantastic stable coin, similar to a US dollar stablecoin or a European euro stablecoin. That, in my perspective, should make it more feasible. Using the DEX would be more useful if the major currencies had truly solid stablecoins, which they do not now have. As a result, we are also praying for it. That was extremely close to happening. I believe that when the SEC filed a complaint against us 2.5 years ago, we were about to close a deal. As a result, that sort of derails things. Agreed, we'll see then, but to make it more useful, we're aiming to get banks and other major financial institutions to issue some premium stable coins, so people as David Schwartz plainly states that they were coordinating. This is exactly what I expected to happen with a Tier 1 bank launching a premium stable coin on the XRP ledger. USDC is an excellent product. It is a dependable and stable coin, however, it lacks an issuer. A strange tech startup all, because they want to control their own money. I believe that countries and institutions will eventually begin issuing their stable currency, because none of these numerous organizations have done so. Enterprises, institutions, or nations will lack the technological know-how to build their platforms, and will instead rely on tools such as the XRP. Ledger and David Schwartz mention plainly that they are working on it. This is extremely thrilling right now. This is quite exciting because it puts XRP in the ideal position to connect all of these large institutional-grade stable coins and makes XRP the purely decentralized liquidity backing all of these more centralized stablecoins built on the ledger. I've been making assumptions. I've been thinking about this for a long time and seen David Schwartz validate some of my suspicions. I'd like to move on because it's just so cool. To another video, since it was equally fascinating. For a long time, many members of the XRP community have speculated that XRP may someday function as a type of global reserve currency. Some inhabitants in this area think the thought is preposterous and that it is silly to even bring it up, but you'll find that David Schwartz genuinely understands and treats the question. Seriously, in this case, I want you to pay attention to everything David Schwartz said because it was fascinating. I've been talking about this for a long time, and Darren Moore Jr. has transformed the way I think about it, but it wasn't his idea. It's fantastic to hear from David Schwartz. Take notice of some of these beliefs and reaffirm them. Do you believe two world reserve currencies can coexist at the same time? I do, and I believe it is conceivable. I believe it is fairly probable that the dollar is no longer extensively utilized as a reserve currency, and I believe that many countries are willing to experiment. One of my wildcard success scenarios for a digital asset is nations come to recognize that the United States. The dollar will not always be the reserve currency, and other currencies will eventually replace it. People will wonder why I don't think this will happen rapidly. Would a bank utilize what you were selling them when they could use something made by banks? This is similar to what we saw with banks when we first began selling software. Banks also failed to comprehend that only 4 banks, Deutsche Bank, SBC Credit Suisse, and J.P. Morgan Chase, out of the total 6,000 institutions on the earth, are large enough to build a system capable of supporting all of the other banks on the planet. They are the most powerful and formidable opponents. These groups are despised by them. Most would not want to use the system they established because they are their largest and most powerful competitors. And sustain, and I believe that countries may go through the same thing. Every country desires the currency to be the reserve currency for the planet, and the US economy has risen unfairly. Every other country would agree that it has been growing by leaps and bounds for decades. It would be lovely to hold the world's reserve currency, but the US is the only country that has a chance of retaining its position, followed by Russia, the EU, and possibly one or two other countries. To be honest, the majority of nations recognize that they will not be the new world reserve currency as a nation's currency. As a result, they may prefer a currency that is uncontrollable by anyone to one that is in the hands of their main geopolitical competitors, and thus, in my opinion, that represents the greatest likelihood of success for digital assets if these nations decide that, while the US dollar can last indefinitely, they will not use it as their currency because no one will want to repeat the US dollar right. Only the EU wants the euro to replace the dollar. Except for Russia, no one favors the dollar. Substitute for the ruble. Everyone except China favors the UN's replacement of the dollar. Instead of choosing a currency ruled by their most powerful geopolitical competitor, perhaps they should choose one that no one can control. Hence, that is the scenario I believe has the most probability of success, but the real question is whether it will work. The difficulty is how to persuade everyone to agree. They might agree if their geopolitical opponents force the adoption of a new currency to replace the dollar. If the option is to pick no boss, which is not the case if the old boss is merely replaced by a new boss, I don't think a lot of Bitcoin aficionados will see it as very great if it happens to make them as affluent as possible. David Schwartz hasn't done an interview like this in a long time, and you can tell he's much more at ease discussing some of the things Ripple is doing behind the scenes now that the case is over, and I found his statements in that clip to be very revealing. I am convinced that one day none of the numerous nations that are currently obligated to use the United States financial system will desire to do so. The United States has utilized the financial system as a weapon against virtually every nation on the earth. In the end, these nations are responding in this manner because they have no other choice. However, as we move to the Internet of Value, and as these nations' institutions around the world consider whether or not to be bound to the U.S. financial system, which is being used as a weapon against them, they will look for alternatives. I predict that countries will use their currencies significantly more frequently in the future than they do now, and that there will be a range of reserve currencies. According to David Schwartz, to create a decentralized, impartial, and equal playing field for value exchange, all of these nations will need to look for new technologies and assets every day. David Schwartz and the rest of the Ripple team appear to be positioning XRP to be that asset and in. The fact that he is truly guessing about this and discussing it in this interview, in my opinion, proves that this is not a pipe dream. This isn't just any old opium. He works hard every day to do this, and to be honest, it gives me a lot more faith in what we've been talking about for a while. People, I hope you enjoyed this update, even though they are not identical. These are the videos and interviews that you should truly focus on and pay attention to. I hope you had a good time, guys.